Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us here on today's episode, whatever platform you're listening to us on, wherever in the world you're listening to us from. Greatly appreciate the support, and thank you once again for joining us. Today's topic is going to focus on what college recruitment looks like in today's day and age. We're going to get into our guest's role in the recruiting process, what challenges are unique to trying and recruit players today, and also how players themselves looking to play at the next level can put themselves in the best light to be recruited. So our guest is going to share his insight and experiences and help you if you are a coach who is recruiting players, or if you're a high school coach or AAU coach, help your players put themselves in the best position to be recruited. I'm very happy to be joined today by the associate head coach for the Reedley men's basketball team. My guest today is Coach Mike Fulford. Coach, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you, Coach, for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Really looking forward to the insight that you share. I feel like there's so many players putting all this stuff out there about trying to get recruited, so many coaches looking for players. There's a lot going on as we're going to get into and trying to do the whole recruitment process in today's day and age. So really looking forward to it. Coach, let's go ahead and get started with your basketball journey, your coaching journey. Where's the game taken you, and how did it lead to Reedley?
Well, that's a pretty loaded question, isn't it? My journey is pretty unique in the sense where I am the son of a basketball coach. My father, by way of Illinois, he coached high school basketball in the Southern California area for about 30 years. And so I pretty much grew up in a gym the entire time. And, I just really fell in love with the analytics of the game. And as much as the kids now like to see highlights and things, I was always looking at, guys' footwork. How did they get to certain spots? And that was just something I was interested in, at a young age, and I didn't really understand it at the time. So I played, obviously throughout the AAU circuit. I played high school basketball, and unfortunately my career ended playing wise pretty early due to some pretty severe knee injuries. And I tried to get back into it, but it just was never the same. But mercifully, I fell into coaching. I started coaching at 22, and it was really I would say a gift from God, long story short. But, I started coaching freshman basketball for 2 years here in the Fresno area, which is in the Central Valley of California. And after those 2 years, a kid that wanted to sit on my bench and just kind of learn from me, he was trying out at Reedley College, who had a new head coach at the time named TJ Jennings. And Coach Jennings was looking for an assistant coach. And so we kind of linked up from there. And it was just weird how everything works because our parents knew of each other. They both their parents lived in Sacramento, which is in Northern California. So we coached together for a year. And right after that year, the Hoover High School here in Fresno, where I was the freshman head coach, they were then looking for a varsity coach. And I didn't want to leave Reedley because I felt in a very unique situation that here I am at 24 years old and I'm coaching at a college level. And I'd only had 2 years of freshman basketball under my belt. So, I didn't want to leave, but, Coach Jennings was very instrumental in making sure that I advanced my career. And he kind of told me, he was like, hey, as much as I love having you as an assistant, you're catered and meant to be a head coach. And if that's something that you want to do, then you at the college level, then you need to get head coaching experience. So kind of reluctantly, I applied back at Reedley. And again, being the son of a coach, I kind of am an over preparer by nature. And so I prepared heavily for the interview, not with really any expectations, but I ended up getting the job. And I coached there for 4 years and had a ton of talent come through the program, guys that went on to the JUCO level, some that are now at the D1 level. And then I ended up back at Reedley. TJ made me an offer I couldn't refuse, and asked me to be his associate head coach. And him and I are the best of friends. And so now I'm back. I'm back. So I had 1 year under my belt again in 2018, 2019 season. Then we got hit with COVID, and then now we're back here.
That is unique to leave and come back. I don't know if I've had really any guests who've had a situation like that, leaving a program and then being able to come back, and that's awesome because as I'm sure those college positions, those go quick. Coach, before I continue, I noticed something on your social media profile that I wanted to ask you about really quickly. You have a hashtag that says 1% better. Is that something unique to the program? Is that your mantra? Where did that come about?
Yeah, I just kind of adopted the idea of just trying to get a little bit better every day, right? Trying to get a little bit more together. There's a coach, the great coach, CJ Haydock. He coaches at Fresno Pacific University, and he always talks about getting a little bit better, a little bit more tough, right? A little bit more together every single day. And one of my former players that I had when I was coaching high school basketball plays for him. So I talked to him a lot. And that's one of the things that he tells me that coach is always preaching to them. And so just with our guys at our level, I want them to be encouraged to be focused on the progress and not necessarily the results all the time. So when we go into practice, guys are so anxious to get after it that I just kind of want to remind them to slow it down and just focus on getting 1% better every day. So that's something that we're trying to adopt and just really find our identity with.
Yeah, I feel like if you have an approach like that, there's a lot more opportunities to see success or celebrate success if you're not just focusing on the final outcome, but like you said, kind of the procedure to kind of get you there and the successes that you have along the way. I'm sure that is it's almost a lot healthier to kind of view things that way and see all the success that they're accomplishing every single day, even if it's in small increments. So I like that a lot.
Absolutely.
Before we get into diving right into the college recruitment process, I know we just touched on a little bit with your introduction, but I wanted to talk to you specifically about Reedley College. Can you kind of set the scene for the people who are listening about the area, the program, and maybe the goals that both you and the other coaches on your staff kind of have for the program going forward?
Yeah, Reedley is a pretty interesting place. So we're about 45 minutes southeast of central Fresno. And you would think that, kind of driving there, we've had recruits say, oh man, I've never seen, this many fields and farms. And so it's kind of just stuck in a weird area. And what makes us unique is out of the, we have about 100 junior colleges in California. And so what makes us unique is we're one of maybe a handful, maybe 7 junior colleges that actually have dorms on campus. So that kind of separates us a little bit, but our college it isn't the biggest school, but you know what, our rims are 10 feet and the court is the length that it needs to be, right? Which is great. But our school is very much so into agriculture just because of the surrounding area. So we have one of the best agricultural programs. We also have a pilots program, for guys that are into aviation, which is super interesting. But our college, again, is unique. We're never going to be able to, in all honesty, we're never going to be able to sell you on the sexiness of the program. But what we can sell you on is an opportunity to get everything that you want from a college experience. And at the junior college level, being with the ability to have dorms really, really separates that, because guys want to feel like they're away from home and getting the real, Division I, Division II experience, in which they're not having to come from home all the time. So that, it's a little bit different about us. And then just our program goals is, we are looking for the guys with the chip on their shoulder, right? So yeah. Coach Jennings and I, and Coach Tabor, who's one of our other assistants, we really thrive in doing more with less. So my year back at Reedley, for whatever reason, we ended up with 8 guys on our roster. And of those 8, we maybe played a rotation of 7 on a good day, but 6 more than likely. And we weren't very big. I think our tallest guy, it was 6'9". We didn't play too much, but for the most part, we had 6'4" and under on the floor, but we were just tough. And that's really what it's about, just playing with a chip on your shoulder. And so we want to give guys around the area that maybe haven't had the opportunity to blossom. We want to give them a chance to really develop their game and develop who they are as human beings, develop who they are academically, and really achieve something that they never saw possible. Coach and I are both on the same page with that, and we're starting to see a lot of buy-in from the surrounding community, from the school, from players that we're getting in. It's the upside is tremendous.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I really like what you kind of mentioned about how once you step into the gym, the dimensions of the court are the same, and it's basketball, and the surrounding area may be a little different, but no, I kind of feel that way too. That some of these programs and some of these different schools, they look all different on the outside in the neighborhoods, but then you get into the gym and it's like, well, it's basketball. So
Right.
here we go, right?
The ball rolls the same.
Exactly. So Coach, let's go ahead and get kind of started with your role in your program's recruitment process. So can you kind of take us through what your role is? We kind of talked a little bit about the type of players you're looking for, but what does that kind of look like for you when you're out on the recruiting trail? How do you find players? How do players find you? Kind of walk us through what that looks like for you.
Well, again, I'm in a unique situation in which our head coach, I just couldn't ask for anybody better. I mean, he's got so much trust in me to kind of just get the job done. And, he really trusts me with a lot of responsibility. And so I think because of my experience as a head coach at the high school level, I was the kind of guy that during the summer, like in Fresno, we don't have like a 24-hour fitness or an LA Fitness or Lifetime Fitness where there's open gyms all the time, like there is where I'm from in Southern California. So the only time kids are able to really play is if a coach opens a middle school gym or a high school gym. And, within reason, I was kind of that guy a little bit when I was the high school coach. And so not only did that allow me to see a ton of talent and figure out where kids were going to school and things like that, but it just naturally developed some relationships. And I think, I'm a little bit, just even in high school, I was wearing a suit in every single game. And so I kind of became that coach with the suit on. Yeah. So what that's allowed me to do is really be able to identify and know who's playing where, what grade are they in, what coach are they playing for, what's their playing style. And so I think it's given me a little bit of a leg up just in terms of my recruitment database. And so Coach Jennings relies on me a lot to just know, okay, this is what we need coming up and where can we find it? And so I'm always looking. I'm at all the tournaments. And because I'm a basketball junkie, I will sit from, the 9 a.m. game to the 8 p.m. game. I'll sit there all day. I'm just kind of thick in the head like that. But I love it. I love the process. And I think if these coaches, the high school coaches and the players are working so hard to put a good product on the floor, the least that they can deserve is the coach to sit there and watch them and kind of figure it out. So, that's a lot of the legwork I do in terms of the greater Fresno area. And then finding me, I'm 33 years old, but I'm kind of more of an old school mentality coming, in the shadows of my father as a coach. So I've had to really adopt this whole social media thing, and just kind of what it is. And so I had to jump on Twitter, and I've been fortunate enough to link up with a ton of coaches on there and other recruiting services. And I think the more that I put, my own personality and our program and what we're about, recruiting services are starting to reach out to me pretty often. I get tons of DMs per day about, a kid needing a spot here and needing a spot there. And, or I'll get kids that are just somehow finding me. It's amazing what they can do on the internet. So they're able to find me and they're reaching out to me, and sometimes they pan out where it just seems like it's a good fit and we talk. And if the finances meet in terms of, if they're able to get into school, maybe it's an out-of-state tuition, then we consider some more options. But it's really all about having open communication and I'm on my phone a lot, to be
Yeah, I can
honest. I'm on my
imagine.
phone. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
go ahead.
I love the grind. I absolutely love every ounce of the process.
Is it important for you when let's just say players are looking to find you, is it important for those players to, if they're reaching out to you, to craft a message that's particular to your program, that shows that they actually are aware of like what Reedley is and kind of what you guys are about? Or does it matter if they're just kind of sending a generic message that they might be blasting to who knows how many coaches?
That's a great question. I am more definitely on the side of more of a personalized message, just
Hmm.
because I think that respect goes both ways, right? So if I'm looking for a specific player or a specific size, I'm not going to send the exact same message to each kid, you know, and I haven't watched their film, and maybe I'm like, hey, you're a dynamic scorer when really all the kid does is play defense,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
that's just, I'm looking for something, but all he does is shoot the basketball. So I think whenever I'm reaching out to a kid, I let them know, hey, this is what I've seen. I know you're at X, X and Y high school. I know that you're coached by so and so, and this is what we're looking for. This is what I think your strengths and weaknesses are. So, it means a lot to us as a coaching staff when they reach out to us. They let us know who their name is, and what we can provide as a school. And if they do just a little bit of history of what our school is, I've had more messages than I'd like that are addressed to the wrong person.
Oh no.
And I understand. Look, I get it. There is a
Yeah.
million kids trying to find a spot, but at the same time, it's like treat it as an interview. You just never know who I am. You never know who's looking. You never know who I might forward it to, if they might need a point guard, because I'm friends with a ton of coaches. So I think it's important to do a little bit of due diligence and just kind of figure out, okay, what does it look like over at Reedley? Where are they located? Who's the coaching staff and things like that.
Well, I kind of brought that up because of when you were describing the area of where Reedley is. I can imagine that if you're kind of getting more of a generic message and you kind of look into a player and you're like, do you really know about this area? Do you really, is
Right.
this somewhere that you really want to be at? Those are the kind of things I kind of think about. Um, if they're like, are they just sending it because they just are willing to play, college anywhere, but they would be not happy if they ended up here, really. I feel like those are kind of some unique situations that you have probably as you get deeper into those conversations with players.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
Mhm.
and to be honest, we are brutally honest about everything. We
Yeah.
don't hold anything back in our program, just because we really want to establish a relationship with these guys that extend far off the floor. And so we'll let these guys know, like, hey, look, this is the reality of the situation around here. We're about 40 minutes away from the biggest city, which is Fresno. So it's nice enough that you're able to get over there. But at the same time, if the focus is academics and basketball, then you're in a perfect spot because you don't have
Sure.
any distractions. Right. So,
Yeah.
we really put the onus on them to take accountability of their growth and their athletic and academic career, um, without having to sell them on any fluff. And I think that's happening too much at any level, but especially at our level, it's happening too much. And we just don't want to be a part of that, because I don't think it's going to help them in the long run, when they're dealing with real life situations.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you there. Speaking of some of these conversations that you have with players, is a question that just kind of popped in my mind. Do you have interactions with players who maybe see themselves as, like, oh, I'm going to, go D1 and this is exactly where I'm at. And they have these aspirations of somewhere, or maybe they're just not ready to be there yet. And you have to kind of have a conversation, like we kind of talked about, these honest conversations, or those conversations that you find yourself having a lot, maybe you don't have them that much. What's that kind of process like, where players, where they see themselves isn't quite exactly where you see themselves as you're trying to kind of get them in your program?
You know what? That's a really difficult conversation to have this day and age, to be honest.
Is it? Yeah.
It's tough, and a lot of it is because you just don't want to, as a coaching staff, you kind of are in the ego bruising business. And you just have to tactfully find a way to tell them that here's the reality of the situation. So, I'll see a lot of things online, oh, this is the most slept on player in such and such spot. And, I always grew up, my father always told me when I started stressing about recruitment, my dad always told me, if you're good enough, they'll find you. And at first I thought he was kind of blowing smoke, but he's absolutely right. Because the only reason, especially at our level, at the junior college level, guys go to our level for one of, a few reasons. Either academically, they're a little deficient in terms of not being a qualifier, or, they have some character issues that they definitely need to develop on, or they have some holes in their game that they need to fix, or they need to get bigger and stronger, and just athletically they can't handle it, right? That's generally one of the 4 reasons as to why they're with us. And so one of the biggest things that we kind of have the conversation with them is like, hey, if you have Duke aspirations to go play for Coach K, right? You can't have JV work habits, right? So if you're coming into practice if we have practice at 5:30 and you're starting at 5:15, that's not a Division I mentality, right? You can't, when the whistle blows right after we leave out of the weight room and you're ready to go home, like, you got to put extra work in. You got to ask questions. You can't just be working on, 3-point shots all night. We talk about all the time, how many guys are in the gym working on defensive slides or defensive or their angles in terms of their closeouts? How many guys are asking questions about, drop coverages and pick and roll reads and things like that? Like, those are separate questions. Are you watching film separately? So it's not necessarily that we're trying to kill dreams, but we try to paint a picture of what it looks like at the next level. This is what you need to do on the court. And then off of the court, what is your nutrition looking like? Are you putting the proper things into your body? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you doing the extra runs? Are you, you know what I mean? Are you competing against the best players, or are you just going to open gym just to show that you can shoot better than everybody else? Like, what does your extra work look like? And I think when we start painting that picture for them, it helps us to describe and say, hey, you may not be doing A, B, and C, but here's the game plan of what we can do. If these are your aspirations to get there, then we are going to push you as if you're already there. So we'll show you the blueprint, but now it's just up to you to follow it, right? And generally, especially at our level, we tell our guys all the time, Division I's and Division II's, except for a couple of outliers, they're not coming to JUCOs to look for their next star player. They're looking for you to fill a role for the most part. And but still, the opportunity is there, right? The goal is to get you out. The goal is for you to graduate college with 0 debt. That's our goal anyway. And so if we can get you out, whether it's D1, D2, and you don't have any debt underneath your belt, then that's a win. That's a win. The rest will take care of itself.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be a huge win. The statistics on debt and student loans, I mean, mind-boggling. So for players to just have that experience and be able to get their education, not have to be saddled with a bunch of debt, I mean, and play some basketball along the way, if that's how it works out, like, sounds pretty good to me. Sounds like a pretty good deal.
That seems like the best scenario in my world.
Yeah, absolutely. So we kind of talked a little bit off air, and we've also kind of touched on a little bit. So let's kind of go specific into the challenges that you see, Coach, that exist with kind of recruiting in this day and age here in 2021. What are some unique circumstances that you feel like exist in the college recruitment process that maybe didn't exist years ago?
Boy,
Where do we
some of
start,
the biggest challenges in this age, I guess it's a gift and a curse, really is the social media aspect. Unfortunately, there's just this idea among our grassroots players that if you're not going D1 right out of high school, that something's wrong with you. But it's like, the percentage of kids being able to even play at the next level, it's something near 5%. And of those 5%, even at the next level, I mean, we're talking about our JUCOs, NAIA, D3, D2, D1. Of those 5%, how many of them are going Division I, right? And so I just think that their understanding of what the recruitment process looks like and the possibilities are a little skewed. And so social media definitely plays a factor in it, especially for our level. It's tough. I've been to a ton of I'll go to a ton of showcases and I'm sitting next to all these Division II schools and maybe a low major D1 and things like that. And here I am, little community college man over here. And I'm just like, okay, well, they're looking at these schools as if, those are the big times. And then, just I think in the back of their mind, we get pushed to the wayside a little bit, but there's literally nothing wrong with junior college basketball. And I think that social media has kind of created that narrative as if like we're a lower division of basketball, but it's tough. I've seen so many, junior college, we've coached against them that have so much ability and they have so much game. We played a kid 2 years ago at Las Positas named Michael Hayes, and oh my God, you should see the athletic ability on this kid. I mean, he was like a miniature LeBron. Like his size was just insane. I mean, he should be playing Division I basketball. We've got kids in our gym that have Division I athleticism, but they just have some holes in their game, right? And so I think if we can kind of get that message out, that it makes recruitment a little bit easier in this era. So we just got to change the stigma on it, and we're trying. I know there's a ton of other JUCOs that are trying as well to change the stigma and really just say, hey, here's an opportunity for you to achieve your dream. And so let's run with it. It doesn't end here. Just because you come to JUCO doesn't mean you stay here. The goal is to get out. You just need some building, right? You need to take a year off. So, and then, some uniqueness now I think is with COVID. Obviously that's probably the biggest outlier. We used to be able to, if guys were local, we used to be able to say, hey, come take a visit, come to a practice, come do this. But now we do everything on Zoom. And so, one of the biggest hurdles is trying to get face-to-face with somebody because, obviously it's a little bit easier to establish a relationship when when you've seen what the other person looks like and kind of can get a feel for their mannerisms. So one of the things that we do when we're talking to a recruit that is interested is we try to get them as well as their representatives in terms of their parents or whoever their closest guardian is on the phone. Because I don't think in this age with everything going on, you won't be able to secure the trust from a kid unless you have their parent approval. It's just not happening, especially considering we have dorms. And if you're coming from out of state, then you're staying with us, and realistically, we become your caretaker. I don't have any children just yet, but that's exactly what I would want as a parent. So, just trying to navigate, that interaction that we once had before. And for the fact that there's not as many tournaments, especially last year, there wasn't any, holiday tournaments in which you can go and watch 16 games in a day. You're watching a lot of film and you're watching a lot of highlight tapes, and you're trying to go off of gut and listening to coaches about trying to get their players out as well. So you just got to navigate through the weeds. But if you're willing to put the work in, it gets the job done.
Yeah, as somebody, as you just mentioned, who likes to just see all the games and likes to be at all of them, I can't imagine the difficulty it must have been to not have any of these showcases to go to or not have as many to go to and relying on these other things, because I don't think anything quite compares to seeing somebody in person, does it?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a big time proponent of body language and just being able to see everything that encompasses the kid, because us at Really, we recruit character first. We want to be around good guys. We do a ton of team bonding events in which the team will come over to our house and we'll swim, we'll watch the NBA playoffs together, we'll just kind of fellowship and things like that. And you want good guys in your home, right? And we want to be around, and we want their families. We want the entire experience. So we recruit those guys first. And it's, obviously when you first meet a coach or when you first meet a player, you get their representative, you get their good cop representative, but it takes some time to figure out who they really are. And so you kind of are behind the 8 ball with that now in this Zoom age, I guess we can call it.
Yeah, very true. No, that's very true. I like what you mentioned about how you get the good cop first, the good side first. That's well put. With all of the social media that's out there, something that I've noticed is I feel like not just for the students I teach, but for the players I coach, is kind of the mental health aspect, or a lot of players feel like a lot of pressure. They kind of have low maybe some low self-image of themselves because of they're always comparing themselves to other players or other people that they see online. Is that something that you've kind of noticed? Do players, you feel like they have like a lot of pressure that they put on themselves to kind of get in their head a lot, or when they get to your program that they're, really, nervous about what their next step's going to be, or there's just all this noise that they're seeing on social media that they're having any issues kind of figuring out? What have you kind of noticed with your players in terms of that?
Yeah, I mean, we live in a mixtape highlight generation, right? So like kids aren't even watching, full games anymore. And so everything that they see is the best version of whatever another player did online, right? So, you might see a kid go hot, they might hit 3 or 4 shots in a row and then that gets slowed down on the mixtapes. And I understand the game of it, but but then what happens subconsciously is that every other kid thinks that that's what they need to be doing, and it it makes it seem as if the kid doesn't miss or doesn't have any flaws, but realistically, if you watch the entire game, he might have went 4 for 14 and had a very inefficient night from the floor. So I think it does put a big time pressure on these guys to think that they have to be something or not. We just had a conversation recently with some of our guys about doing what you do best and do it better than everybody else, right? So if you are a sniper, an absolute knockdown shooter, and we have a couple in our program who catch and shoot, I mean, 7 out of 10 times, I mean, if they have a little bit of space, it's going in. Like, they just absolutely shoot the ball. But for whatever reason, they may feel as if they have to put the ball on the floor and make all these other extra plays. And it's like, hey, simplify the game. Like, just make it easy. You don't need to do this. You're not having to impress anybody. Peer pressure is a big thing. So it comes at all levels, just not at our level. There's, you'll have friends in the crowd, or you'll have parents in the crowd, or any supporters that, oh, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, this, that, and the third. Yeah. It's like, no, you should be doing what you're best at and then working at your deficiencies, right? So it's tough because nobody's ever posting their failures on social media.
Yeah, that is true.
And when I grew up playing basketball, obviously the internet was there, but in terms of like mixtapes and stuff like that, they just weren't present. And so guys, we weren't worried about realistically being embarrassed and things like that. Like, I've noticed, guys are kind of hesitant to pick up 94 feet. They're afraid to get crossed, right? They're afraid to challenge guys at the rim in fear of getting dunked on. And it's not just because they're getting dunked on, it's because they might end up on Twitter. And so that literally plays through their mind at all levels. It just plays through their mind throughout, and it kind of holds them back from their true potential or playing hard. And we try to explain to them, like, look, if you're looking to get to the next level, like, coaches want to see that you don't care about the outside noise. You're willing to do what it takes to get the job done. Like, take your cool jacket off and let's play basketball, right? So, that's tough. That's tough in this age. And we just try to explain to them, like, the only thing that matters is the support from your coaches and the rest of your teammates, and let the rest take care of itself.
It's funny you bring that up about being dunked on. I saw something a while back. I wish I remember what the specific, clip was, but it was on a player's highlight reel. I believe they had just gotten dunked on, and they let that in their reel because then they showed how afterwards they just got right back into their offense and got into some sort of action, and then they got a basket on the other end. I think it was just to show, like, okay, this happened, but that next play mentality. And I thought that something like that was just really interesting and really unique that a player would have included on their reel, just kind of showing that more mental aspect.
Yeah, that would stand out to me big time. As a coach, that's one of the first things I would notice. Like, would you sulk or would you get up and sprint? And now we're right back into our action. Because, I mean, as you know, there's a camera everywhere for everything. So if you're getting dunked, if somebody's dunking on somebody else, they're probably celebrating, they're looking to the crowd and stuff like that. But meanwhile, we're getting a layup on the other end.
It's 5-on-4 on the other end, right?
Like, 2 points is 2 points. And I get the momentum swing of the thing, but let's play. So that's a big standard. That's a kid I would call immediately.
Yeah. You talked about, especially in the COVID age in the past year, just that the prevalence of highlight tapes. And I hear a lot about how either much they're worth or how worthless they are, depending on who you ask. As somebody who, you like to go and see people in person, you like to go to the showcases, you like to go to the tournaments, players, I feel like, spend a lot of time curating and crafting these highlight tapes to put them in the best light possible. For you personally, there's like two parts to this question. One, what value do you think exists in those tapes? And two, what do you think is important or would make for a good highlight reel or huddle clip reel for a player to make?
Yeah, you know what? In regards to your first question, I think the value of it is just kind of giving coaches a short glimpse of your capabilities, right? So, you know, probably, and I wish I should be a little bit better at this, but there's probably close to 20 unread at just like today. There's probably close to 20 unread DMs on Twitter that I just haven't been able to get to. And so sometimes I'm so busy, you know, we're already into the thick of our summer program and things like that, that I just need to see a quick clip. They're like, okay, what does this kid do? Is he selling himself as athletic? Okay, well then I need to see a quick 30 seconds of how athletic he actually is. Or is he a knockdown shooter? Let me see a quick clip of, you know, some catch and shoot stuff off of a flare screen or something like that. So if you're able to show those things, then I'm probably a little bit more enticed to watch anything longer or develop some type of communication with them. And then in terms of your second question, the reality is whatever you think that you're going to message the coach, say, hey, you know, coach, I'm a 6'3" point guard that really likes to facilitate. Well, then your message should mirror what your highlight tape is. Whereas I've had a ton of guys that were like, you know, I really love to play defense and this, that, and the third, but then their entire highlight tape is nothing but no look passes and, you know, and dunks. And I'm like, well, two things aren't coming together. I'm not understanding that. So just kind of mirroring your highlight tape to, you know, to ensure that it matches your message. And then I'm a big time proponent is because I can't, you know, as much see full games, I'll ask for a full game film. And I would encourage recruits all the time to have a full game film ready. You know, maybe have a couple of them because I want to see the entire, I want to see your flow. How are you in the game? Or is your highlight just, you know, happen to be circumstance? You might have caught, you know, a couple of alley-oops, or you might have been out in transition, or did you catch that because you were in the right spot defensively and you had your hand up in the passing lane and you were talking on defense? Like I want to see what happened before the highlight, because that's really going to dictate to me how you are as a player.
Yeah, that's a really good point about, you know, kind of like getting as much as you can of like that full picture of what happened before and after. And what you said makes a lot of sense about, you know, whatever you want to brand yourself as, you probably should be showing that on your tape, right? Whatever you say you are to a coach, hopefully you have evidence of that existing there on your tape for sure. And kind of taking that a step further, since you have so much experience kind of going to these showcases and seeing players in person, what do, in your experience of seeing players in person, whether good, bad, or otherwise, what do you see or what do you notice when you're watching players play that maybe players themselves aren't even aware that they're doing it, or, you know, things that you kind of just pick up on that may be more subtle that players might not even be aware that they're demonstrating or showing?
Yeah, so, you know, I have a habit, if I can, whenever I go watch, if I'm watching a kid play, I'll sit directly across from their bench, generally. And it's because I want to see their interactions with their coach, because that's going to tell me a lot about what our potential interaction is like. I want to see their demeanor when things aren't going well on the floor. And maybe they're sitting on the bench. What is their demeanor like? Is it, oh, I should be playing more, or I should be on the floor, or is it in absolute support of their teammate? And so that's what I'm always looking for. So some of the things that I always see, you know, is the body language aspect. Maybe if they're making they might even make the right pass, and maybe one of their teammates just happen to miss the shot. And so one of the things I'm looking for is, are you going to continue feeding him? Are you going to tell him, hey, that's a great shot? Or are you going to hang your head in kind of more the mindset of, well, maybe I should have shot it, right? So, you know, and that's specific with our guard, with a lot of point guards, and especially in this area, we kind of are very guard heavy oriented around here. So that's some of the things that we're looking for. We're looking for guys that are sprinting back on defense, you know, whether they make or miss. especially on the misses, right? It's easy once you make a basket to be talking and be ready to play defense. But, are you sprinting back on defense and doing the right thing at all times? Are you communicating with your teammates on the floor? In our program, we like to talk about being proactive instead of reactive on the defensive side of the floor. So are you communicating early, even 2 and 3, maybe plays or progressions within the other team's play ahead? Are you communicating those things? And so we're looking for all of those aspects, and I know that I definitely am. So body language is big for me. Interactions with your teammates are big for me, and just your spirit and competitiveness of the game. Like we're looking for dogs, right? We're looking for guys that just love to compete, that love to win, but even more, they just hate to lose, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that their team does not lose, and they want to see the success of their teammates.
I am curious about your perspective and how this looks, because I feel like it looks maybe a little bit different in every area, specifically regarding to AAU. I've seen and talked to coaches who, they see teams and they see players where AAU is just more of a individual showcase, and the results of the game or results of what happened doesn't particularly matter to them, so their level of competing isn't that high. I've also kind of seen and talked to coaches who have been around AAU programs or tournaments where it is taken very seriously and competing and winning, and it's not just all about the individual like getting theirs. I'm just curious, from what you see, what do you kind of notice in your area? Where does it kind of fall in some of the showcases or AAU things that you look at?
I think for the most part, unfortunately, I've kind of experienced, it's more of just like, it's just kind of more of a let me get mine kind of highlight thing. I mean, it's very little defense. And you would be surprised at, how people just accept that is the mantra. Like, oh, it's just a showcase. I'm like, yeah, well, show what you can do. And I want to see you, if you can score 30, then score 30 against great competition. Like, score 30 the right way. I don't want to see you just score 30 because you're cherry picking and you're standing in the back and you're just getting dunks because you're not getting back on defense. Like, that's not going to translate. And so, one of the things that I really would encourage, people putting together these AAU programs and showcases is that you put product on the floor that's going to translate to the next level, right? So we always, especially in our program at Reedley, we always tell our guys to practice as if Coach K or Coach Pop is sitting in the gym, is sitting in the stands. Like, your practice and your habits would be a whole lot different if they're sitting in the gym, right? And so I think the same thing should apply in showcases. Like, you wouldn't at the college level just stand in the backcourt and wait for a pass. You would be getting back on defense. And unfortunately, I think that's kind of gotten lost. And maybe some of it is due to this media age, because you can make a pass up floor, you can put it in slow motion, a kid gets a dunk, and it looks like everybody's going hard. And when the reality of it is, it's not. So unfortunately, we see that a little bit more. There's certainly some outliers in some programs where they just go hard all the time. And those are the ones that they end up having kids that are far more sustainable at the next level.
And so to me, the way I kind of like hear your answer is, if you have a player who's at a showcase and they have talent and they have skill, and maybe they're on par with the other players at that showcase, if they're really competing and they're showing like they're willing to get after it, and they're kind of taking the game seriously, and they're competitors and kind of putting it all out there, I feel like that might be something very beneficial to them in terms of standing out, because that really shows like more of that mental and emotional toughness that maybe isn't necessarily expected at a lot of AAU tournaments. So that seems like a simple way to kind of make yourself stand out a bit.
Yeah, I mean, when I was coaching high school basketball, I would, send my kids to some of these showcases and things like that. And one of the biggest things I would tell them, even if they weren't the most talented guy on the floor, I'm like, hey, be the loudest guy in the gym defensively. Be the most energetic guy, because that's just, energy is contagious, right? And so if I'm a coach sitting on the side of the floor, on the sideline, I'm looking like, who's that kid that's like screaming on defense? Like, who's the kid sprinting up and down the floor at 9 a.m.? Like, we're talking about a 9 a.m. game. The nachos aren't even ready yet. So, like, I'm looking for that guy. And it'd be surprised, I had a kid that ended up getting a call from a junior college simply because he was willing to do the dirty work. He didn't put up the numbers that everybody else did in a showcase, but because he played harder than everybody else, it panned out. And now he's playing Division II basketball on a full ride scholarship. So it's like the proof is in the pudding. Like, coaches want guys that are going to, again, take the cool jacket off and play hard. We know who can play basketball, but are you willing to do the little things that are going to keep you on the floor?
That's a really funny point. If I heard somebody kind of screaming and yelling, getting after it at 9 a.m., they're going to get my attention one way or the other. I'm going to figure out who it is. I don't know if that'd be a player I necessarily want or whatever, but I'll pay attention. Be like, okay, I'm going to know who that player is. They're going to stand out for one way. Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
So as you just mentioned about your experience coaching high school, we have a lot of high school coaches who listen, and I've had a couple who've been curious about, what can I do as a coach to, give my players or teach my players a skill set that's really going to be beneficial to them, or what's something that, I can implement or work on with my players to, kind of get them ready for the next level. There's so many different things that coaches can do, but in your experience, what are some things you think high school coaches can do to kind of get their players prepared or kind of get them ready to put themselves in the best position to stand out to play at the next level?
Well, number one, watch a ton of film. Like, that's number one. Watch a ton of film, and when you're watching the film, focus on that one player and everything that he does, right? So, and then figure out what his strengths and weaknesses are. So, as it relates to your offense. So, I had a kid when I was in high school, and fortunately, he plays for me now at Reedley. It's just kind of bizarre, but I had a kid who is an absolute knockdown shooter. He's about 6'4", 6'5", and he just shoots the leather off the basketball. But his deficiencies were putting the ball on the floor or shooting off of the dribble. Catch and shoot, he's probably not going to miss. But everything else, it was kind of a deficiency. So one of the things I would work on when we were doing our player development was everything that we did had to do with off the dribble or coming off of a flare screen or coming off of a pin down or drifting into the corner, maybe catching off of a baseline drift pass. So we're putting themselves in game time scenarios at game time reps or at game time speed to kind of get them comfortable with these new ideas. That way, we already know that you're a great catch and shoot player, but let's focus on the other things that you face during the games that will make you even more of a threat, right? And so maybe we'll pick 2 or 3 things to work on for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Honestly, we'll pick 2 or 3 things to say, let's get better at these 2 or 3 things. It goes back to that hashtag that I have on Twitter, 1% better, right? Yeah. So we'll try to focus and really hone in our skills on 2 or 3 things as opposed to spreading ourselves too thin and trying to work on 1,000 different moves at once. It just doesn't make any sense. So we just try to concentrate on a couple of different things. And once we get those down, now we can build upon things. So now maybe a kid is coming off of a flare, and because he's a great shooter, he's knocking that down. But now what does it look like when you come off the flare and the kid closes out on you, and you've got a 1 dribble or 2 dribble to the baseline and then stop on a dime and pull up? So what does that look like? So we're just building upon habits and it kind of lays the foundation, and now we're just building the house. So again, watch a ton of film, understand your players' strengths and weaknesses, and then just formulate a game plan and understand that it's going to be a long-term investment. It's not going to happen overnight.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's a marathon, not a sprint sort of situation. Absolutely.
Correct, yeah.
Is there anything in terms of overall, like X's and O's, like kind of a schematic sense that a high school coach might want to definitely make sure that they work on, kind of like not just necessarily individually if they're players, but whole team? I guess, are there any situations you've had at Reedley where players come in and maybe schematically there's some things that maybe they didn't quite know or didn't quite get that maybe would have been beneficial if their coach had kind of taught it to them in high school?
Yeah, that's a great question. In this area, there's a legendary coach he coaches at Clovis West now. His name is Vance Wahlberg, and Coach Vance Wahlberg is he's largely responsible for creating the dribble drive offense. And he created that in the 90s, and then he coached at a junior college, and then I think he coached at Pepperdine, and then he got into the NBA a little bit, but he's back at Clovis West. But because of all of his success and just, obviously the accolades, which are well-deserved, everybody around here runs the dribble drive. And when I mean everybody, it's from basically Modesto on down to Bakersfield. And again, we're in a guard-oriented, area of the state. And so the offense is great. It's great. And it translates to the NBA. That's what everything is, right? It's three and key, like the Houston Rockets, they're running this. It's a three or a layup, when James Harden was there. But they also still have to be able to develop the ability to stop and shoot the mid-range jump shot. Like the elbow's not dead, right? The 7-footer's not dead. Chris Paul, I always say when he gets to that right elbow, he's going to shoot like 90% once he gets to that right elbow off the pick and roll off of a snake dribble, right? So being able to find spots and little pockets, because everybody's shooting layups or threes, the defenses are now predicated on stopping threes and layups, right? So you got to be able to get into that little pocket and hesitate and freeze the defense and knock down a 13-foot jump shot. Yeah. So just working on those things. Maybe you're not shooting them all the time in the games, but definitely in practice and in your individual workouts to be working on those things. And so what we see is guys come in and they don't understand free movement, or like we like to call old man basketball, right? Just being able to make a pass, screen away, and then come off of a secondary screen and get into a spot. They're a little bit more robotic at this age, which I understand, because it makes it a little bit easier to teach 15 to 17-year-old kids in that manner. But when they get to the next level, they have a little bit of a learning curve on the offensive side. And then on the defensive end of the floor, it's really just about angles. We have gone so far in our program to even pull out like lines on the floor and say, hey, this is what a 45-degree angle looks like in comparison to the basket. Here's what a 30-degree angle looks like. And when you close out, I need you at a 35-degree angle. Right. And so, and maybe it's just because I'm a little sick in the head and I'm very meticulous defensively. Again, I'm in a unique circumstance in which Coach Jennings, even though he's the head coach, he controls all of the offense and he's a brilliant offensive mind. And then he's really tasked me with coaching all of the defense. Like he realistically makes zero changes on defense. And it's not because there's not a know-how, it's because he trusts me that much to get the job done. And so we kind of treat it like a football team, right? Offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator kind of thing. And so I've had a lot of freedom to I get to just toy with defense all day. I don't have to think really much about offense. And so I'm always looking for innovative ways to help our team be successful. And it's proven, it's proven to really help us out, especially last year. As small as we were, I think we were like top 10 in efficiency defensively. So, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I mean, we get guys that work hard. And so, I think that if other coaches can really just help find innovative ways to help kids understand the game a little bit better, it'll definitely translate.
Yeah. I really like the coaches who really work on kind of the how to play and like what they're actually trying to do versus just running plays or running through the motions sort of thing. Absolutely. Before we hit our concluding segment there, one other question that just popped in my head about the whole recruiting process. How important is it for you and your program for players who when they're kind of showing their whole student profile, who show things that aren't just basketball related, whether it's like GPA or activities they're involved in or things that they're in? How important is it for you personally, kind of like the whole player, not just the basketball player process of looking at recruits?
Yeah, it's big time, because we will, you're recruiting the human being. You're not recruiting a basketball player. We say all the time that basketball will end for everybody at some point, whether it's because of, father time, it's injury, or maybe you had a long career. For me, it ended early, but some of the things that I learned was character-based, and just how to conduct myself as a person. And so, early on, what was important for me was the ability to build and maintain relationships with all of my coaches that I had. And and just being able to conduct myself and have conversations with people that were older than me and being able to learn from them and exert my personality. And so when we're looking at, recruiting players, or even when we are trying to get our players out, one of the first things that we talk about is their character as a human being. So I might ask, a coach, a high school coach, is like, how is he off of the floor? Like, what are some of the dynamics that he's struggling with at home? What are some of the things that he needs? Does he need a little bit of hand holding in terms of, getting to practice every day and this, that, and the third? Like, how's his accountability? What's his communication like? And it's the same thing when we're getting players out as well. Like, the first thing we do when we make a call to a 4-year school is like, hey, this is what kind of kid he is. This is the kind of person that you're getting. And then we talk about their academics. This is where he was, and this is where he is now. Here's some of the struggles that he has, but these are some of the plans in place that he has to overcome these obstacles. So we talk about those two things, and that's before we even get to basketball, because if those things aren't taken care of, then the basketball piece is irrelevant, right? So,
Sure.
And I think that if you're running any semblance of a good program, whether it's high school, whether it's college, prep school, it doesn't matter. Character and academics have to be at the forefront of the situation. Basketball is an afterthought in reality. Because again, there's very few of us who are going to end up going to the next level or going to play professional and things like that. But who are you? What have you developed into as a human being that is not part of basketball? And I think there's so many other great coaches that resonate with that same idea. And so being able to speak that language is important on both ends of the spectrum.
Well, you are in a really unique situation. I'm thinking about how if you have players who transfer out of Reedley and go to a university, those players are representing Reedley to whatever school that they're going to. Like you're sending out these players, and the way that they perform or the way that they act and the way they conduct themselves also is a reflection on your program as well, is it not?
Absolutely. And I'm always big on saying, hey, it's not about me. I don't need the accolades. Once a kid plays for me, I never need a kid to say, thanks Coach Mike for X, Y, and Z, because it's not about me. If it's about me, then I'm in it for the wrong business and for the wrong reasons, right? But at the same time, coaches are always going to be mindful of where did you come from? And then when you have certain habits, they're good or bad, they're going to generally look at where did you develop those habits at, especially if they're bad habits. And the first person they'll look at is me. And so I want to make sure that when I'm sending my guys out to be a reflection of what our program stands for. Mm-hmm. And the other part of it is, if I send a kid who's got a bad character or who just has bad work habits to a program, the likeliness of that coach trusting us again with another kid, slim to none, unless he's just an otherworldly, athletic player. But, so we just never want to burn those type of bridges. And we explain all of these things to our players. We give them the full scope of the situation. We believe in brutal honesty in our program. And while it can be difficult at the beginning, it always shows itself to be the best thing to do at the end. And we have developed fantastic relationships with our former players. We always say that we want to be invited to the weddings. Matter of fact, Coach Jennings is headed to a wedding today for one of our former guys from like 7 years ago. And, we get the success stories of guys graduating. Now they're teachers and they're basketball coaches, or, they're playing elsewhere. And that's really what we're about. I mean, we love hearing that guys are able to play basketball on the next level. But when we hear these life stuff, man, that's the stuff that warms the heart for sure.
Yeah. And just to have those stories to look back on and to reflect on. I mean, that's to me, that's what it's all about. Like to be able to have all those experiences that you can kind of look back on, or players who, valued their experience, and, in knowing, and I'm sure you do, that a lot of players did value their experience, even if they don't articulate it to you, that, right, you did right by them and everything. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
To wrap up, Coach, there's a couple questions I ask every guest. We're going to go ahead and start with this first one here. Thinking back on your coaching career, what do you think is a coaching moment from your career that others listening would be able to learn from?
Be yourself. And I know that sounds really generic, but it's so easy. We're in a copy and paste field, right? Just like the NBA, they says they're in a copycat league, but just be yourself, stand firm on what you believe in, stand firm on your knowledge of the game, but at the same time have a humbleness in the fact that understand that you don't know everything. I will never claim to be the smartest coach in the world, but I'm always going to work hard. I'm always going to work hard, and I'm always going to have full belief in everything that I'm doing, and I'm going to do everything with a purpose. You can't let the outside doubters creep in, because once that happens, and if you're the leader of a program, it's gonna filtrate down to the rest of your players. And the players have very moldable minds, and so it's you as a leader that needs to make sure that you stand firm. When I was coaching high school basketball, we upset a team on the road in the playoffs, and then we ended up going to play against San Joaquin Memorial, which is a powerhouse here in Fresno. The Lopez twins played at San Joaquin Memorial, Quincy Pondexter's from San Joaquin Memorial, and at the time, probably the number one pick, Jalen Green, was there, right? And so, and they had a ton of other talent, a couple other D1 guys, one that's at Washington, one that's at Fresno State, one that went and played D2. I mean, the talent was limitless, and I think we were maybe like a 35 to 40 point underdog, and our guys were really nervous because here we are, a little school that doesn't get any notoriety and doesn't have the historical success of like a San Joaquin Memorial. And I said, hey, listen, guys, like the ball bounces the same way for both teams. We're going to go into a hostile environment. I can't tell you how many coaches were in there trying to see Jalen and a couple of their other guys, but we played our butts off. We played hard. And I told them, like, I told our guys, here's a chance for us to earn some respect. You have an opportunity to change what the perception is about small schools and not having a big name. Unfortunately, we ended up losing by 4 or 6, I think, and kind of just in the end. But what they found out is everyone respected them afterwards. Guys were coming up to them afterwards from the crowd and said, you guys played a great game. And as much as they were hurt, I talk to those guys all the time, and they remember that game. And as much as they feel like they still should have won the game, what they remember the most is they were able to overcome the odds. And that's what I'm most proud of with them. And so, again, just being true to yourself, understanding that you can get the job done as long as you put the work in is important. Don't shortchange, don't take any shortcuts.
Yeah, excellent. That's awesome. That's a really good story. And I'm sure if I was one of those players, like, man, coach, we could have won that game still. I probably would have been.
Think about that game probably every other day. I can remember that game play by play. It's killing me.
Oh, that's awesome. And coach, to wrap up, I give every guest what I call a 60-second soapbox, your platform to get out your final idea, closing message, closing thought that you would like to leave our listeners with. So, coach, I'm going to go ahead and give you the floor, and you can take it from here.
Well, I think really it's about getting information out there about the benefits of a junior college. Obviously, I'm probably a little bit biased because that's where I'm at, but I think just understanding that if you're a high school coach or even a junior college coach, the goal is to get your players out, and the ultimate goal is to get your players out with their degree and no debt, as I mentioned before. And so, it's not always about getting the full ride scholarship to Division I right off the bat, but I'm looking to put together a plan in which maybe I create some type of online seminar or have something posted on my Twitter or something like that explains all the ways that kids can get to college and get through college without any school debt, right? So, Coach Jennings is a big proponent in terms of talking to our kids about the 3-part hustle in terms of, especially if you're a California resident, right? You can get Pell Grant money and your financial aid if you're a qualifier. And then on top of that, if you take care of the academic piece, now we're looking at academic scholarships. And then if you take care of business on the floor, now you have athletic money on the table. So you may not pay for college at all, and you're getting extra money to put in your pocket that can help, for your future as well. And I think that there's not enough information going towards our youth about that, which I think causes a little bit of pessimism about, hey, I got to go D1 to make it. It's like, no, that's not true. You just got to take care of business, and you have to understand what resources are available to you. And I think that it's the responsibility of guys like myself to get that information out there. whether they come and play for me or not. I'm not about only helping guys that come and play for me. I want the entire generation to succeed. I just happened to get really lucky, and I had a great team around me of people who were able to help me out and able to tell me and point me in the right direction. I had a lot of prayer and just a little bit of work ethic. So I think if we can get that information out there, I definitely would love to collaborate with any other coaches that have more information or any other powers that be to try to help get more information about the real world out there to our guys.
That's excellent. I really appreciate you sharing that. I think those are some really, really good insights to kind of leave us with. Thank you, Coach, and thank you for spending some time talking about the recruitment process, talking about Reedley, talking about JUCO, talking about some ins and outs for players and for coaches to give them some more information about what it's all about. And hopefully, Coach, not only will you have a safe season and everything goes smoothly, but I hope you get to go to some showcases and have your 12-hour days where you get to watch some basketball in person. Thank you so much for joining us, Coach Fulford. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Coach. I appreciate your time.
And thank you all for listening. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.